Okay. Well, good morning. And this is the Wednesday lecture for Philosophy 4900. I hope everybody's doing good today. I see a few already in the class on Zoom. Today, we are going to continue going through this week's material. We're going to, well, let me try to get rid of this window. Christina, I see you there. Okay. And who else is here? Christian,
Hello, I'm here too.
I see you there, Basil. I already got you marked down, and I
Oh,
see Donovan,
thank you.
hey, Anthony. And now to, all right, we're going to continue. We're going to pick up on branding and employees. Remember that we're talking about what the duties are that the employee owes to the organization. And hold on, I got to stop this share for a second and then get it back up. Just a small little detail. And okay, we're back. Okay. So Byers and Stanberry, the authors of your textbook, pointed out that a brand, meaning the marketing that a company puts into creating a specific product image. Now that brand could also be the organizational brand, the efforts that are put into make that organization's public image appear positive, negative, um, that can also be considered a brand. But here we're talking about more along the lines of the brand of the products or services themselves. These belong to the organization, along with any trademarks, copyrights, or other means of protecting intellectual property. The employees in an organization are expected to engage with the public positively regarding the organization's brands. They don't want to hire people and be paying them and giving them compensation packages and benefits if that employee is going to be going all over town talking smack about their products or services. Because then word of mouth is really a very powerful weapon or tool in advertisement and marketing. So if you have employees going around and saying bad things about the products, people are going to stop buying or they're not going to be prone to buy those products. And organizations don't want that. So the employees do have a duty to speak highly of the organization and the organization's products or services. But since everyone has access to social media and possesses the ability to make posts, organizations must continually monitor their brands. They hire people to just monitor and maintain their image on social media. All right. Social media is a very powerful tool. And Peter Singhi from MIT, he talks about how it has led us to become more interconnected in some ways, yet the interconnection is not always true. And so we're actually more disconnected than ever before, yet we think we're very interconnected. What does that mean when it comes to organizations? Employees working for a company can have their personal social media accounts. And they do have the ability to say X, Y, and Z and all these different things. However, when it comes to the company they work for, they can lose their job if they start posting smack about that company or organization. So be mindful of how you engage on social media, particularly when it comes to the company you work for. Whistleblowing, it is not going on social media and complaining. That's not whistleblowing. Whistleblowing is a very specific way of handling situations, problems, issues, scandals, etc. Just going onto social media and venting is not going to be looked upon favorably when it harms the organization's brands. Excuse me. All right. So continuing on with talking about branding, the authors presented internal marketing is how organizations are able to develop the brand's image in the minds of the staff. So, internal marketing is going to basically be having meetings about the products, speaking about all the positive aspects of the products or services, putting posters up. It's A lot of companies also have an intranet where their employees are able to access all kinds of organization related information. And there they probably would have almost like advertisements set up so that the employees are exposed to the positive information about the brands. And that is really a way to build up the brand's image in the minds of the staff, especially when it comes to new products or products that employees are not familiar with. However, is it ethical for an employee to post negative things about their employer's brands? Well, we mentioned that briefly on the last slide, but let's dive a little deeper into it here. Is legal recourse needed to protect the brand image? Meaning, do they need to use the intellectual property laws that are out there, trademarking, copywriting, all these things, to protect the brand image? Or is internal marketing going to be strong enough to combat any such negative sentiments in the minds of the employees? While you and I, we're sitting in a college class, we can say and we know, hey, employees of companies should not talk bad about the company, the brands, or the services because that company is paying them. But in real life, what is it like out there? We see it all the time. We all go onto social media, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is. We all use these to some degree. And we have seen people complaining about the companies that they work for. Is it productive? I don't think it is. I don't think that venting in that way is going to be productive because social media, as Peter's saying, he does bring up, he brings up that there's no way to validate the information on social media because everybody's able to sit on a keyboard and type. So now we got an avenue for misinformation. And when it comes to organizations, that misinformation comes in the guise of employees talking bad about the companies or the products. And we have to be careful about that because if I'm getting my paycheck from this company, I should not shoot myself in the foot by talking bad about that company. After all, they are paying my bills. So I don't think it's ethical for an employee to talk negative things on social media about their employer, their employer's brands or services. I don't think that's ethical because I'm receiving money and compensation from this organization. They're expecting me to work in a way that benefits the organization. If I'm acting on social media in a way that's contrary to that, now I'm duplicitous. And we talked about, I think it was in week 1 or 2, about having a single source for our ethos, for our ethics. And I think that it not only applies to leaders, it applies to the employees as well. Have one single solitary source for your ethics so that when you're at work, you're positive about the company and the brands. When you're at home, you're positive about the company and the brands. Now, problems do arise. And venting to one's spouse or close friends, okay, that I don't see that as a problem. But venting on social media where literally every person on the planet can access that information, that is not ethical in my opinion. Now, you might think otherwise, and that's okay because here in college, we are here to develop critical thinking skills. And I do try to bring up topics, and sometimes they're touchy topics, but we've got to learn when we're evaluating, we take the middle ground and we look at both sides of that, and then we make our conclusions. So the employee's obligation to the customers. Byers and Stanberry discussed how a customer's initial and at times only interaction with an organization is through interacting with the employees of that company, namely either customer service, or in retail, the frontline employees. If you're in a restaurant, the frontline staff. That's the face of the organization. That's why hiring is so important. You've got to hire the right people that are going to fit into that organization, not just into the position they're going to do, but into that organization's culture. This is where customer satisfaction merges with employee satisfaction. We want our customers satisfied. We want our employees satisfied. In doing both, we actually merge those together. Happy employees make happy customers in normal circumstances. And this is why it is essential for an organization to work at improving employee morale, employee satisfaction, and employee engagement, along with employee motivation. So You need to invest in your employees. You want them with high morale, satisfied, motivated, engaged. And that's going to help bring it over, translate to customer satisfaction. So, an employee's obligation to other employees in that company. The textbook pointed out that a positive work environment needs the following: open-minded employees, courteous employees, kind employees, a relational atmosphere, a work environment free from sexual harassment, dirty jokes, and discrimination, and lastly, a professional work environment. Now, open-minded employees doesn't mean that they're going to be changing their worldview. No, their worldview is theirs. They should have it. But an open-minded employee is not closed off to interacting with people from other worldviews, from other cultures, people with other perspectives. They may not agree with them, but they say, that person, their perspective is valid because they are the ones with it. They're sitting in that part of the theater. They see reality as this. Maybe there's something I can learn from it. Courteous employees and kind employees may sound like they're the same thing, but a courteous employee is somebody that is going to be polite in the workplace. They're going to be kind of mindful. Now, a kind employee is somebody that may go above and beyond and actually have more empathy. A relational atmosphere, that's where the employees begin to develop workplace relationships, friendships that sometimes last way past the duration of their employment. You want them to become friends. You want them to become like a family. And a work environment free of sexual harassment, dirty jokes, and discrimination. Wow. Who wants to work in a place that's hostile? I don't. So if I'm the supervisor, then I should want my company, my department, my team to be free of those things. And lastly, a professional work environment. We want our people coming to work with a work mindset. We want them ready to work. We don't want them coming in and still being out in the community in their mind. We want them focused on their task. We want people that are professionals. Our customers are going to appreciate it. Our profit margin is going to appreciate it. Now let's look at how personality can impact everything. Each individual has a very unique personality. Not every personality is going to work very well together. Some just might have a great personality, but these personality types do not mesh together and they're always bumping heads. How do we overcome that? Well, emotional intelligence can help bridge this personality gap. Now, emotional intelligence, I think I put a few slides in on it here. We're going to go into that a little bit. If I don't have slides, we'll backtrack and go back into that. Our personality impacts how we think at work, also at home, at the store, while we're driving. It impacts how we think when we interact with other individuals and on how we place value on ourselves and others. What's our self-worth? What's the worth of others in our eyes? Do we think we're better than others? Or do we think, hey, we're all equal? We're all in this thing called life together. We all have successes. We all have failures. Let me celebrate your successes with you and let me be there to help you when you feel like you're failing. And you do likewise. That would be a positive work environment, courteous and kind. So yes, I did put some slides on emotional intelligence, also called the EQ. Emotional intelligence, according to Brooks, and this is additional information, you can find it in the references of my PowerPoint slides. They were quoting Annie McKee. And the statement here I found really impactful. Emotional intelligence is the ability to understand and manage your emotions while grasping the other people's emotions and motivations. Not just understanding their emotions, but why they're having those emotions. That's emotional intelligence. And this can help coworkers unite together cohesively and work together as a unit. Emotional intelligence relates to how we relate to other people. We use it here in the classroom. We use it in the hallway, on the sports field. Everywhere we go, emotional intelligence actually benefits us. You ever wonder why you have empathy? Well, that's emotional intelligence at work. It helps us to control our interactions at work. and at home and everywhere else. Controlling our interactions means I think through what are going to be the consequences of my actions or statements. If there's a possibility it can be perceived in a negative way, then I should temper it down so that it's not so harsh. It helps us understand our own feelings. Emotional intelligence is just literally that, being intelligent about emotions, both our own and others. It helps us to control our thoughts. Have you ever been sitting there and just felt like your thoughts were racing and you just one thought after another and they're popping through your head real quick? Emotional intelligence is able to put the brakes on that, to slow that down so that we can think things through more clearly in a logical manner. It also helps us to accept criticism. There's positive criticism and negative criticism. Now, positive criticism doesn't mean it's always, hey, you're doing a good job. It could be, I think that you're onto something, but if you did this, this, and this, it would improve your work. That's a positive criticism. It's constructive. Now, negative criticism is destructive. And it may sound positive at first, but if it tears somebody down, it's negative. And that is something that emotional intelligence helps us to filter so that we interact with other people in a positive way that builds them up. And once again, that doesn't mean I'm always saying, hey, great job. If you notice, my feedback on your assignments and your discussions, it's not always positive. But I'm not doing it to tear you down. I'm doing it to help you become better. And so it's constructive. We can understand when we are wrong and apologize. Emotional intelligence is great for being able to identify when I make a mistake and then to have the fortitude to stand up and say, I did wrong and I really am sorry. Now that's only half the equation, isn't it? Because now I need to back that up with actions. I need to show over a period of time that I truly have changed my ways. Some religions call that repentance. And the original word in ancient languages for repentance actually means to turn away from. So if I come to you and I apologize for a wrong I've done, I'm only truly repentant if I turn away from that action. And now I try to do the other action, the positive action, the one that builds you up. And emotional intelligence helps us forgive others. I never tell my students to forgive and forget, because we need to remember the situations that we've been through, the circumstances we've endured, in order to better get our trajectory set for the future, to better act in the now, in the present, in ways that will help us in the future. We can only do that by understanding where we erred in the past or where others erred in the past. So I don't say that we need to forget what others have done or forget what we have done, but rather we need to forgive them, give them a chance to make amends, and remember what it felt like to have that particular circumstance occur. Now let's talk about codes of conduct. Many organizations have an official code of conduct, and it regulates the employee's behavior at work. Sometimes it'll be kind of like codified organizationally. You'll be able to read it on the wall. You'll get it in the employee handbook. I believe Clear University in the student handbook, there's a code of conduct there. It's basically the same thing. The authors presented many topics that are normally covered in most codes of conduct, and they include sexual harassment. Now, sexual harassment isn't just unwanted touching. It's also unwanted statements or unwanted inquiries. They also include the treatment of customers. Employees need to treat customers with respect and dignity. Also, it discusses bribery and gifts and workplace romance. Most organizations frown upon workplace romance, especially if the two individuals are in the same department. Why? Because if one person is a supervisor or a leader, or becomes a supervisor or a leader, and the other person is now subordinate to them, there can be favoritism. It's called nepotism, demonstrated. And now that person, their romantic partner, is then elevated when they don't deserve it. Some organizations are okay with workplace romance as long as you're in different departments. And if you do end up marrying somebody in the same organization, you can always talk to HR before this wedding ceremony and maybe get transferred to another department. Here's a sample code of conduct. I'll leave it on the screen for a moment here, and we'll go through a couple of them. Compliance with all laws. The employees must comply with all laws, including bribery, fraud, securities, environmental, safety, and employment laws. Let's skip down to cybersecurity and digital devices policy. Employees must not use company computer equipment to transfer illegal, offensive, or pirated material, or to visit potentially dangerous websites that might compromise the safety of the company network or servers. Employees must respect their duty of confidentiality in all internet interactions. So we see here that a code of conduct can actually spell out very clearly what an employee can and cannot do, what the expectations are. And it's very wise to follow that code of conduct, because if you don't, and you're sitting on the computer and you're going to dangerous websites and a virus hits the computer and goes into the network that the organization has on their servers, they're going to identify you as the source. You're going to potentially lose your job, and you won't be able to get a good reference from that company ever again. So it can damage you not just in the now, but in the future. Let's look at the workplace respect. Employees must show respect for their colleagues at every level. Neither inappropriate nor illegal behavior will be tolerated. Now, this is a sample of code of conduct, but this gives you an idea of the types of things that are covered in it. You're actually dealing with the employee's behavior, how they interact with other individuals, with the equipment, with the customers, with the suppliers, with their supervisors. You're not telling them what they can and cannot do on their own time, except when it comes to maintaining confidentiality, the duty of confidentiality. If you have access to information that is proprietary to that organization and held confidential, you can't be out and about on your own time spreading the information, because everything has a way of resurfacing at some point in time, and it could impact your ability to be employed with that company. And furthermore, it can give you a bad reputation. So if you go to try to get hired in that same industry, you may have a bad reputation now, and it could be very difficult to get employment. Cybersecurity is a relatively kind of new addition to many codes of conduct, and this is due to the numerous incidents of hacking, phishing, and other online issues experienced by many organizations, including different viruses that get in the worms and stuff like that. They get into the computer system and destroy the computer system, or a virus that gets in and leaks out customer data or employee data. We've had so many instances of these leaks and these hacks that have occurred. So companies take it very serious. They want their customers, their clients, and their employees to feel safe about the information that the organization has collected on them and maintains, that is maintained in a very safe way. As a researcher, when I collect data from participants, I have to make sure that it is 100% safe and secure. And not just at that moment. I literally have to keep that information in a safe, secure location for 5 years. After that 5 years, I can destroy it. I can't disseminate it. It has to be destroyed at the end of 5 years. That's so that people feel safe. Organizations want people to feel safe about their data collection. Now, fiduciary duty, once again, that deals with finances. And due to insider trading, fiduciary duty has been launched into the spotlight. Insider trading occurs when an employee uses inside information in their investments or gives the inside information to a friend, confidant, or other individual. This can cause ginormous shifts in the stock market, and this has already led to many financial scandals, and it will lead to more scandals in the future. That's why organizations are really big on it. You have to maintain strong and strict fiduciary duty. Employees owe a fiduciary duty to the employer. And remember, it is kind of variable. It increases. That duty becomes exponentially greater the higher your position is, or the greater your access to the financial workings of that organization are. Now let's talk about bribery here. Employees should not accept bribes due to the unfair advantage received by the one giving the bribe. If you're working in a receiving department, and a supplier offers you a all expense weekend trip to a luxury resort, if you move their contract or you approve their contract and not the other people that are applying to get that deal, that gives them an unfair advantage. That's why bribery is wrong. We should all be able to enter into our business dealings having the same advantage. We got 10 suppliers. They all want the contract. There's one contract, but we want to give it to the one that deserves it, that we think we're going to have the best working relationship with, not the one that gives the biggest gift. Some gifts, bribery is an illegal practice, and some gifts may be legally seen as a bribe. So there is a legal difference between a gift and a bribe, and it has to do with the value. So when I was working in a hospital, if a patient wanted to bring in a cake they made, that was fine. That's a gift, but that's fine. But if they wanted to bring me a gold watch, that would not be fine. It had to do with value. Most organizations have a policy against receiving gifts to protect themselves from the legal liability associated with the practice. The company doesn't want the legal exposure to their employees getting gifts that are actually bribes. And so they make it against the policy. And many times it is the size of the gift that causes the alarm. How many times in the news have we heard about somebody getting some sort of free trip to the Bahamas just so that they could approve a contract? Or maybe they got flown around on a private luxury jet, all because that person wanted their contract. We got to give the people that are competing for the contracts a fair advantage. They all should have the same exact ethical and fair advantage. They have to submit what they can do, how they're going to do it, what they're going to charge. Then we make our decision. If we're being influenced by the gifts or the bribes, now we're being unethical. Now let's turn our attention to ethical leadership. Employees should expect their leaders to make ethical decisions. However, this is not always the case. Leaders should discuss decisions with trusted colleagues or their superiors to ensure they remain ethical. I highly recommend people, when they engage in decision-making, you don't enter into it alone. You bring people in to get input, to get feedback, to make sure you're ethical, to make sure you're making the best sound judgment call that you can, but also because there are so many variables that affect every moment of our existence. And I can only identify so many of them. Another person can identify more. Now, even if we had 150 people all working on this decision-making process, we're still going to miss some of these variables because they're exponential. They're just ginormous. We're going to miss some. But the more of them that we can identify in advance, the better decisions we can make. And making sure that we're being ethical in our decisions means that we need to understand we're being biased somehow in some way. And by bringing somebody else to the table and sharing with them what our thought process is in this decision, they can help us overcome these different biases. Ethical leadership must be demonstrated from the senior leaders down to the frontline or operations leaders to set an example throughout the entire organization. In an organization, you have 3 tiers of leadership. Starting at the top, you have the senior leadership or the executive leadership, also known as strategic leadership. The middle management, you got, of course, the middle management leadership. They're also known as the tactical leadership. They are the conduit between the senior level and the lower level. Now, the lowest level is an operational level of leadership. And they are operational leaders, frontline managers, line managers, could even be considered team leaders, depending on the organizational structure. And you want to make sure that your leadership is exercising ethics in the decision-making processes, all the way from the CEO and president and board, all the way down to the shift lead. You want consistency in the organization. Let's turn our eyes now to pay secrecy. For many years, the status quo has been to prohibit employees from disclosing to their peers how much they were earning. You couldn't tell your coworkers what your pay rate was. However, in recent court cases, this practice has been found to be unenforceable in many jurisdictions. Those against pay secrecy claim that employees have a right to be informed when it comes to their employer. In other words, I have a right to know, am I being paid fairly? Are other employees being given more money when they're doing less work? And that's what the claims of these individuals are. Now, where do I stand on pay secrecy? I don't talk about my pay with my peers. I got into the workforce at a time period when you just didn't do that. I can see how, if all the employees are able to talk about their pay level, it does keep the employer bound to being ethical. But I don't think it's really something that needs to be talked about, because it can create unwanted tension between me and my colleagues. If they know I'm making more than them or I'm making less than them, they can either look down on me or despise me. So I'm kind of against it, but that's a personal thing. We're talking about ethics here, and ethics begin inside each of us, and then they translate into the organization and the society and on from there. But yeah, I don't think I'm all for being able to talk about your pay rate. Now, I don't think people should be punished for it. But there again, I think it would depend on the industry, the business sector, the company, and the situation. Now, let's talk about posting on social media again. Byers and Stanberry noted that the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution does not protect an employee criticizing their employer. Many people are confused as to what the First Amendment actually covers. The Constitution's First Amendment does not apply to the workplace. It pertains solely to a citizen's right to criticize the government. When the Founding Fathers wrote the Constitution, they wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to turn out to be like the monarchy that they were just getting freed from. They wanted to make sure that the citizenry could be able to hold the government accountable, and that requires being able to point out criticisms, bring those to the table. Such activity can lead to the termination of an employee. So if I do that at the workplace, if I think I'm protected under the First Amendment and I begin to openly criticize my employer, I could lose my job. If I begin to criticize the government, that's covered under the First Amendment. I'm not going to lose my job. I'm not going to lose my citizenship. It's covered, it's protected, free speech. But we don't have free speech in the workplace like we think we do. We have to be mindful. Our employers and us have entered into an agreement, a contract. I provide a service. I provide duty of loyalty, duty of confidentiality, fiduciary duty. They provide me with a paycheck and compensation. It's the exchange theory of motivation at work. Posting on social media to complain about one's employer is a violation of the duty owed by the employee. Plain and simple. After all, the employee is barred from discussing personal information, including one's performance. So ethically, the employee must not disclose personal problems they have with their employer on such a public platform. Let me break that down, because it's kind of a wonky sentence. The employer is barred from discussing personal information. An employer cannot disclose publicly your job performance rating. They cannot disclose your personnel file, your social security number, your medical status, if they know it, and most employers don't need to know your medical status, so, but if they know it, they can't give that out. They're barred from it. So it only stands to reason then that since they owe the employee that level of protection, the employee should owe the employer the same. That is ethical. So the employee should be barred from airing their dirty laundry on a public platform. Now, after you stop working for a company, that could be a bit different. I don't think that it would be seen in the same light. It may not be looked upon favorably, but it still wouldn't be as unethical as if you're working for that company and then you start complaining on social media. Let's talk about the National Labor Relations Act of 1935, which is also known as the NLRA, and it provided employees the right to engage in collective bargaining through labor unions. Now, we've talked about labor unions in the past. Labor unions still do exist. They're not as popular as they once were. We've discussed that. I think it was in week 8. The NLRA does offer some protection for employees to criticize their employers. So there is some protection for some criticizing of the employer, some criticism. The NLRA does afford some limited protection for employees to complain in a general sense, but not directly criticize their employer. So you could say something like, and it would be protected under the NLRA, yeah, I've had some pretty bad leaders, and I've got one right now that is doing some stuff that's highly questionable. That's a general statement. I cannot say, yes, Joe Smith, my supervisor in the etching department at Samsung, is doing blah, 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 blah. That's too specific and is not covered under the protections of the NLRA. Let's get to whistleblowing. We're almost done with the notes for today. Whistleblowing. Sometimes people think whistleblowing is getting on social media and ranting and raving about an organization that you work for. Nope, that is not whistleblowing. Byers and Stanberry defined whistleblowing as going to an official government agency and disclosing an employer's violation of the law. Do you notice how specific it is there? You're not going on social media. You're not going to the newspaper. You're not holding signs up out on the street. You're going to the correct governmental agency and sharing with them how your employer broke the law, which means you need to have evidence. This is substantially different from criticizing one's boss. Criticizing one's boss could be that you don't like their attitude or how they treat you. Whistleblowing is, hey, they're stealing money, and this is how. Whistleblowing has been protected since 1863, during the Civil War here in America, and it was set up to help curb the unethical manufacturing of war supplies. And you will notice that whistleblowing must go through the appropriate governmental agencies, not social media, not the news, nothing like that. So whistleblowing is a very specific way of handling scandalous actions taken by an employer. And the employee is able to report these to the correct governmental agency. That concludes today's lecture. I'm going to take a look here. Let's see. Okay, we have Enos has showed up. Vios, I don't see Vios. Let me expand this. Just see everybody on the screen. Okay. Okay. Looks like we got a good. Lauren's not here. Okay. Oh, wait. Come here. Nope. Stop. My computer is thinking for itself. Okay, I got everybody in the attendance book. Does anybody have any comments, questions, or anything like that from today's lecture?
No.
All right, then on that note, I will see you in class on Monday. Just to give you a heads up, I believe I need to find out what the date is. It may not be this week. In that case, I won't necessarily announce it right now. Okay. No, it won't be this next Monday, but in 2 weeks on Monday, in 2 weeks, we're going to have the dean. She's going to be visiting our class for about 45 minutes. It's just that time of year when they make sure we professors are doing our jobs, and it's just part of our performance reviews. And so it's nothing punitive, and they're not here keeping an eye on the students. It's literally they just want to see how we're doing as professors in interacting and bringing you the information that you're paying for, making sure we're ethically fulfilling our task. And which I wholeheartedly welcome transparency. Let me let you go. You have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you on Monday. Make sure you keep up with your work in Canvas and get it submitted on time, and contact me if you have any questions or any issues arise.
Great. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
You have a
Bye.
good day.
Thank you. Bye.